Hello everyone, Mark here. I thought I'd do a short posting on these two particular Bibles that you're looking at right now. They were given to us by a very elderly brother just before we left the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. Both Bibles are King James Bibles and were used by him and his dear wife many decades ago, both at meetings and out on the ministry. Sadly, his wife has since passed away, and our thoughts often go to this particular brother because they were married for over 70 years. Very devoted to each other and very devoted and very obedient to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. Now, what makes it interesting is as I was sat there having a cup of tea this afternoon looking at these two Bibles, both of them are King James Bibles and they were printed for the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. And I often thought then, I sort of went back and thought that these were the very same Bibles that this particular brother and his sister, his wife, would have gone out on the ministry with. And like all these sort of Bibles, I'm like a bit OCD. I can't help myself. I always go to John 1 verse 1 and read it. Because it's just therapeutic for me more than anything. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so looking at this particular Bible, I'm thinking, well, I remember what the brother told us about this, that these were Bibles that they went out on the ministry with, these were Bibles that they went to the group study with, these were Bibles indeed that they used in the Kingdom Hall. This next one is of a great deal of interest to my wife and I, because the sister in question had underlined a great deal of this particular Bible in her studies, and she'd put a lot of her own words next to the references there, and they make very interesting reading, especially when you think back to the time that they were using these Bibles. And one particular scripture, when I was just flicking through, you'll see once again that it is written for the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society again. But then I went to just flicking through, you'll notice there, it's underlined, like much of this particular Bible is with her studies. And I'm going to read Isaiah 9 verse 6 there. And it simply says, the bit that she's underwritten and underlined there, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace." Now, she's written to underline some more there, but it suddenly struck me that I was looking at history here. I was looking at a Bible that was used by the brothers and sisters all that time ago when they were out on the ministry. Now, John 1 verse 1 in here says the same as John 1 verse 1 in here, that the Word was God. Isaiah 9 verse 6 there shows very clearly that he was the mighty God, the Wonderful Counselor, the Prince of Peace. And these are scriptures that they would have shared with the general public, printed for the Watchtower at that time. Of course, this all changed in the early 1950s because these Bibles were then closed and kept closed and moved over, and then this one was introduced, this particular Bible, the New World Translation, where we see quite subtle changes, that where you could go to John 1 verse 1 and share that with the sheep, as you would call them, to those interested persons out on the door, and now the New World Translation was saying, no, he's a God, he wasn't the God. And in Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6, they can't change the wording that much, but it still is subverted slightly down. It's very sad to see it, but unfortunately that's what happened. And I often think back how the conversion took place. How did people feel about going from learning their scriptures, writing them like they did, loving their Bible, loving their God, realizing who he was, to suddenly being introduced to completely different doctrine in this particular version, or so-called translation as they call it. It's just a thought, but as I said, I had this sort of part of history from this loving couple right under my nose for all this time, and I just wanted to share it because inside this particular Bible she has underlined so many things that make it a very interesting read about what was going through her mind and in her heart at that particular time. And I find it wonderful that I've managed to unlock that and look at it and see it for what it is. But you can guarantee when they were out in the ministry, they would have been sharing these scriptures about who Jesus really was, because you can't look at it any other way. They couldn't have gone onto the door and shown John 1 verse 1 and said that no, we must ignore verse 1. He wasn't really God, he was a God. It didn't say that in these particular Bibles, so they would have been saying it as it was in the Bible. I don't know. I find it fascinating how things change. But anyway, that's enough of my ramble. Just wanted to share it, and these Bibles will remain with us, cherished forevermore. Bye for now.